Hey, Slater Crusaders. America's the greatest country in the world. Thanks so much for being here. So my daughter is 3.5 years old, and she is the most precious, sweet, wonderful, amazing little girl. And she, for maybe 8 months now, 8, 9 months, has every day she talks about ballet. Daddy, when can I go to ballet? I want to go to ballet. Daddy, can I go to ballet? And yesterday was her first ballet lesson. Yesterday morning, she woke up and she said, Daddy, first thing she said to me, Daddy, how many more sleeps? Meaning, like, how many more naps, how many more sleeps until it's time for ballet? And I said, oh, honey, today is the day. And right before we left to go to ballet, we found out that they make all the girls wear masks. Little 3-year-old girls have to wear masks because of COVID. And we said, no, it's not happening. I'm not going to treat my daughter like she works at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, a biosafety level 4 laboratory. I'm not going to wrap her up like she's a diseased leper going to ballet class. She's 3. And she was the only girl there without one. And just beaming smile the entire time. And all the other kids wore masks and you couldn't see their smiles. And I would argue they weren't. I think kids, so many kids, the psychological damage of wearing masks for so long has been kids have almost like evolved or devolved to not smile because what's the point? It's all hidden anyway. It's terrible what we're still doing to our kids. St. Louis County. I can't figure quite out how the government works in St. Louis, Missouri here, but they have what's called a county executive, or I guess like the mayor of the county, but he issued a mask mandate for the entire county. And then the board voted 5-2 to not only get rid of the mask mandate, but to rebuke the executive for even ordering it in the first place without their approval. Now, the reason this is significant is there was a 5-2 vote against the mandate, but this is a county that voted for Biden 61-37. That's a plus 24 Biden county. And the people of that county said, no, we're done with the masks. Here's Biden just yesterday.
Beg your pardon?
Will you require all federal employees to get vaccinated?
That's under consideration right now, but if you're not vaccinated, you're not nearly as smart as I thought you were.
Wow. Listen, I just want a public service announcement. I want you to remember to get vaccinated. So, because if you don't, then the person who is vaccinated might get sick from the virus that they're vaccinated against. Because you're not vaccinated. Got it? See how that? You need to get vaccinated to protect the person who already is vaccinated. How do you not understand that? There's a person over there who's scared of COVID, so they got vaccinated. So they're now completely protected from it. So now you have to get the vaccine so that you have to get it. So they got it. So now you have to get it so that they're protected. I guess I'm not as smart as Joe Biden thought I was. And it's never going to go away. Actually, we have the audio of this. This is the head of the CDC here.
But the big concern is that the next variant that might emerge, just a few mutations potentially away, could potentially evade our vaccine.
Yeah, that's it. We're just a few mutations away. New York Post had a headline, CDC warns COVID may be a few mutations away from evading the vaccines. You with me? So it's not COVID that's the problem. It's not even the Delta variant that's the problem that we've been hearing about these last few weeks. It's not even the Delta variant. It's because they can't prove that. It's obvious it's not the Delta variant. It's the variant that doesn't even exist that you need to be worried about. You need to be freaking out now about a variant. Oh, what variant? Doesn't even exist yet. I gotta hone up on my Greek alphabet. This would be the Omicron variant or something. The Upsilon variant. We're like 15 variants away. That's the one that's going to be really bad. Can you believe them? Can you believe that? Obviously you can. They want you to be, do not forget this. Do not forget this. They want you to be scared of variants that do not even exist. That's an actual warning from the CDC. Future variants. That's what you need to be worried about. Bunch of psychopaths. Let's talk reality here. Like the CDC, they're like operating with Ouija boards or something. Oh, it's the Omicron variant. This is Mark Thiessen, Washington Post. He said, according to the CDC, these are CDC numbers, there's been 161 million people who are fully vaccinated in America, which is pretty amazing. 161 million. How many breakthrough hospitalizations? There's people who are vaccinated but still get hospitalized. 4,000. That's 0.003%. 0.003%. The average age of those breakthrough hospitalizations is 74. 849 people have died after being double vaccinated. So that's a breakthrough rate of 0.0005. 3 zeros. So, as Mark Thiessen says here, to put that in perspective, your chance of dying from a lightning strike is 0.0007%. And your chance of dying from the seasonal flu is 0.1. So if you're vaccinated, you have a much greater chance of dying from a hornet, wasp, or bee sting, a dog attack, a car crash, drowning, sunstroke, or choking on food than you do of dying from COVID-19. Our risk analysis ability is just like we're just a bunch of total idiots. We can't function properly. Did you eat lunch? You gonna eat lunch today? That's a risk analysis that you took. And we can't, we're so out of our minds. We're being told to worry about variants that don't even exist. Check this quote out. Johns Hopkins, they looked at 48,000 children under the age of 18 who got COVID and found a mortality rate of 0 among kids who don't have any other pre-existing conditions like pediatric cancer or something. How about this line? There's no official government data to show whether any healthy children have died as a result of COVID-19. There's no government data that shows that any healthy kids, none, not one, has died from COVID-19. So while we're worried about future variants that don't even exist, what's really going to happen with COVID as time goes on? I'll tell you exactly what's going to happen. This is what Professor Vincent Racaniello, our virologist from Columbia University, who's not on the right, this is what he told us a year and a half ago. He said there's many, many different coronaviruses that exist and have existed for a long time. There's 4 coronaviruses in particular that make up 25% of the common cold. All right? So 25% of all the different common cold viruses, coronaviruses are 4 of them. This will be the 5th. It's not going to get more and more deadly. It's going to get less and less deadly. And it's going to be even more of a nothing sandwich than it is now. It's just going to be a cold, just like the other coronaviruses that exist. Now let me pivot here for just a second. We share all these facts. I gave you CDC numbers. I got it, right? But the comments that I always get here and when I talk to people out in the real world about this, the comment, it's always something like, okay, smart guy. So then why are there so many disease experts telling us that we need to do this and do that and lock down and wear masks? Why would they tell us that? And it's really interesting that people cannot fathom any other motivation within human nature other than, I don't even know what they chalk that up as, like good intentions, right? And like people can't think of any other reason why people would lie or be wrong. And this is why we share so many stories of experts being wrong all the time, just to knock some sense into people that experts are wrong all the time. We shared the story of Vioxx the other day. It's a painkiller drug, FDA approved, 1999. The people in the FDA lied, the drug company lied, the New England Journal of Medicine said they were hoodwinked. The editor said they were hoodwinked by what they published on behalf of this drug with the different studies. It took 5 years. 20 million people were given this pain drug before Merck finally pulled it and paid $5 billion because the drug caused heart attacks. Last week, Pfizer pulled a drug to help people stop smoking because it caused cancer. Okay, that was last week. But that Vioxx story, it was straight lying and manipulation. And also just ineptness. And people, I guess, they just can't fathom that would happen. And it happens all the time. And I feel like we give examples of it every day, of people in the media or scientists just making things up or being wrong or being corrupt or being political hacks because they're humans. I'll give you another example today. Kitty Genovese, 28-year-old woman, 1964. She was attacked and stabbed to death in Queens, New York. This was what the New York Times wrote about her. For more than half an hour, 38 respectable, law-abiding citizens in Queens watched a killer stalk and stab a woman in 3 separate attacks. Not one person telephoned the police during the assault. Horrible, horrific. This story, that article, that sentence, created an entire field of scientific study called the bystander effect. Super popular. Every psych course teaches this. The 10 most popular psychology textbooks all have the story of Kitty and the bystander effect. And the thing is, it never happened. She was murdered. That part happened. But the rest of it never happened. People did call the police. People did help. There were 3 separate attacks. During the first 2, people yelled and scared off the attacker. That's why there needed to be a second and a third. When the guy finally ran away the 3rd time, another bystander held Kitty in her arms until the ambulance arrived. So people called police, multiple people called police. So we have this entire field of psychological study was created because of a New York Times article that made it up. Just made it up. So you say, oh, how could these disease experts make all this up? It happens all the time. People make up stuff all the time. Politicians, people in the media. Are you kidding me? Finally, last story. They don't add this to the list, right? Like they don't care about COVID. They haven't cared about COVID from the jump, just based off their actions. The fact that the governor of Michigan told people in Michigan not to go to Florida because there's too much COVID there, and then went to Florida herself is like so bonkers. She should have resigned immediately, been run out of office, and that's the end we ever heard of Governor Whitmer. Like that is so crazy. But these people don't care about COVID. Gavin Newsom's obviously the best example, right? He's the one who went to the French Laundry in the middle of one of the first big waves without a mask and the whole thing with a big party. And just the other day, his son went to a summer camp where they weren't wearing masks inside. And he pulled his kid from it only because someone took a picture of it. But he didn't care beforehand, nor should he, by the way. He shouldn't care, but he shouldn't force us to do these things either. In the same vein here, this is from Axios. 50,000 migrants who crossed the southern border illegally have been released into the United States without a court date. Although they were told to report to an ICE office, just 13% have showed up so far. What is up with those 13%? Right. Now, we can do a whole immigration study on this, but my point here is, anyone want to guess their vaccination status? You want to guess the vaccination status of these 50,000 migrants? Same thing the other day, we shared the story, maybe like 12 media outlets, where last summer, literally the headlines were, Black Lives Matter, protest, don't spread COVID, experts say. And then with the January 6th Capitol riot, Capitol insurrection, super spreader event, experts say. Same thing. My 3.5-year-old at ballet is a super spreading leper, but we have literal busloads of illegal immigrants from Mexico? Totally fine. That's what we're supposed to believe. And then I'm going to listen to you? I'm going to listen to the experts? Remember, the CDC, with their almighty guidelines, says you shouldn't eat raw cookie dough. That's what they do. They make ridiculous guidelines. We got to get back to normal. And normal means ignoring absurdly impractical guidelines from the CDC. Let's get it together, people. Friendly reminder to please download our app. Super easy. This is the thing I love about this app so much. It's so simple. It's the cleanest. I'm sure there's like a technical app word for this, but just like front, like up to it. You just click it, boom, all the videos come up. Easy to scroll, boom, you click, it's all organized, great. Boom, click place. Just piece of cake, easy. And all the shows are right there for you for free wherever you are. Super grateful you're watching us on whatever means you are right now, Pluto, Apple TV, Roku, whatever. But you can just watch us on our phone wherever you are. Super easy. Just download the first on the App Store. Coming up next, I sort of want to talk about Simone Biles. It's not really about her, but I want to talk about social contagions, which is something we all need to understand because no one else does. Do that next. True story. Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, why does this Simone Biles story matter? That's one of the main criticisms I got yesterday is from people who are supporting her. It's like, why do you care so much? It's like, well, first of all, it's just like interesting. Like, can't I care about like a major cultural moment that occurred in the Olympics? I don't know why I need to like justify that beyond that. But alas, I'll tell you why I care so much. It's not so much what she did. I wish her only the best in her life. What's interesting is people's reaction to it. It's people's reaction. Real quick, if you don't know, Simone Biles is the greatest female gymnast ever. She just quit in the middle of the team competition. She just quit. And she later said it's because I wasn't having any fun. Now, afterwards, people have made up all these other excuses as to why she quit, but you can't pay attention to any of those because they're just making that up. She said it wasn't fun anymore. I don't want to do it. And that's never happened before in the history of the Olympics. That's interesting. We should comment on the thing that's never happened before in over 100 years of Olympic Games competitions in any sport ever. All right, so what's the big picture thing here? People don't understand the power of social contagion. Generally, we don't talk enough about culture and the influence of culture in our lives. Instead, we talk more about like innate characteristics of our group, or like you're born with it, right? But no, culture is so important. And a part of culture are social contagions. We've referenced this a few times. Brown University, 2-3 years ago, some researcher there did a study on a term she came up with, rapid onset gender dysphoria. So gender dysphoria is where you think you're transgender, and rapid onset, it comes quickly. So she's looking at all these girls in particular who, out of nowhere, think they're boys. And she was looking at this, and she did a study on it, and she released it. And her conclusion was that these girls have a lot of other issues, anxiety, depression, etc., eating disorders or whatever. And the contagion is the idea that switching genders is the solution, right? That's a contagious belief that once one girl thinks it in a school, then other girls start to think it, and it spreads like a virus. And it's and by the way, we referenced that study because some transgender activists said that's transphobic, and Brown University got rid of the study. She's gone now, and she got fired from the Rhode Island Health Department as well. So she's blacklisted completely because she dare say something that's against that cult. So, but it's a fascinating concept, like the idea that gender dysphoria is contagious. What? How can that be? It's very similar to suicide. There's a lot of research that suicide is contagious. This is why newspapers don't mention suicide when someone commits suicide. They don't say it. And the idea is here that when suicide is glamorized, even unintentionally, more people will do it. And that sounds so crazy. What do you mean more people will commit suicide? But it seems to be true. Do you remember when Robin Williams committed suicide? It was back in 2014. It was 7 years ago. In the 4 months following his suicide, and that really, I think that was like the last big celebrity suicide, right? In the 4 months following it, there was a 10% increase in the number of suicides compared to what would be expected. That's another 2,000 people ended their life. And they could say, okay, well, over the next 4 months, we would expect 17,000 people to commit suicide just based off of averages and what happened last year and the year before. They expect 17,000. And there were 19,000 people who committed suicide. 10% jump, 2,000 more people. And it wasn't even just the number of people. It was the means of suicide. There was a 35% increase in that one particular way that Robin Williams committed suicide. Interesting. Very similar with mass shooters, right? The media glamorizes it. They may not mean to, but they do. They publish the shooter's manifesto. They make his name famous. The Rolling Stones cover is an extreme example. This is one of the Boston bombers. One of them, the dreamy one. So we have 3 social contagions: mass shootings, suicide, and gender dysphoria. We need to be careful what we incentivize and what we glamorize. We need to be careful and ask ourselves, are we incentivizing and glamorizing bad things that we don't want more of? Okay, that's the background. So what's my argument? We have a culture today that glamorizes, first, being a victim and not overcoming. We see that many times. We've always lived in a culture where you get praised for overcoming obstacles. And now we live in a culture where you're praised for quitting. And we see that all over the place. The second thing is we're glamorizing, I want to be careful. It seems like we're on a road towards glamorizing mental illness. And as a society, we need to find the right balance here. We're all about extremes in our culture right now too, which is not a great thing, right? Even with Simone Biles. Simone Biles, she's the worst person in the world. How dare she betray her country? Throw her in the brig. Like Bo Bergdahl, right? And it's like, oh, well, that's probably not right either. But then you have the other extreme, which is, oh, she's even more of a hero now than she was before. It's more heroic and wonderful that she quit than even if she won. Like, what? What are you talking about? That can't be right either. So it's the same thing for our country. We're maybe for a while we were too far in the mental health realm. We were too far in the, suck it up. And now we're too far in the direction of coddling. And don't get out of bed. And yeah, sure, all those fears and anxieties you have, those are all true. You should wallow in those for as long as you can. And you're like, oh, geez, that's not good either. We got to find that right balance again. And we need to start considering the idea that perhaps mental illness is a contagion. I mean, look at the fear from COVID that's all around us. Right? An actual virus, but an irrational fear. There's 700,000 people live in Washington, D.C. The second half of the month since July 15th, there's been how many deaths? One. One death from COVID. Right? But people are freaking out. So fear spreads through our culture. That's a form of mental illness. And so do all these other mental illnesses. It spreads through our culture. It's a very popular book from a while back. It's called Crazy Like Us, The Globalization of the American Psyche. It's from 2011. And this guy's argument is that we don't only spread American culture around the world when it comes to like McDonald's or Mickey Mouse or American movies. He says we also spread the American perspective on mental illness around the world. He calls it American-style depression. American-style depression, post-traumatic stress, and anorexia have begun to spread around the world like contagions, and the virus is us. So the argument in the book, one of his arguments in the book, is that in different places all around the world, each culture has their own manifestation of mental illness. Mental illness exists everywhere, but what it looks like is cultural. How it manifests itself is cultural. A mental illness in Southeast Asia may look different, or did look different than one in Europe versus one of some native tribe in America or whatever, right? And it also has been different over time. Mental illness looked different in the year 0, 1st century, 10th century, 1700s, and today. But now, this book's argument is, mental illness is more uniform around the world than it's ever been before. And it looks very American. Here's one of his lines. He says, a few mental illnesses identified and popularized in the United States, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, anorexia, now appear to be spreading across cultural boundaries and around the world with the speed of a contagious disease. So the point is, and this is why this Simone Biles thing matters. People say, why do you care? I don't really care about women's gymnastics, but I care about our country. And when you glamorize certain mental illnesses and when you put a medal on it, right? Like, oh, this is even better than a gold medal. You're gonna get more of it. So we need to, as a country, as a culture, figure out the right way to deal with mental illness. And don't get me wrong, please. Listen, if you're not listening to what I'm saying right now and you're gonna criticize me for not caring about mental illness, I can't deal with you. You're not listening. I'm saying we need to deal with mental illness in a healthy way, in a way that better than we have in the past. Help people work through it, but also not glamorize and celebrate it. Because if you do that, you're gonna get more of this thing that we don't want more of. And how we react to things matter. With Simone Biles, how we react to it matters. We don't wanna be a culture where losing is winning, betrayal is being a good teammate, failure is success, right? You don't wanna, who wants to live it? Are you gonna teach your kids those lessons? Of course not. So why are we celebrating it with her? It's very odd. Let me leave you with one last thing here. I gotta go because we got great guests coming up. Something to chew on. This is neither here nor there, perhaps. I'll just give it to you, you can do what you want. We've made the claim before that most people who are woke and critical race theory and Black Lives Matter and all that stuff, let me say, for everyone, it's a form of religion, right? Black Lives Matter, critical race theory, all that stuff, it's filled a God-sized hole in their heart. It's given people meaning and purpose and belonging. There's no question about that. But if you go a bit deeper than that, I think for a lot of people, it's also their effort to find an identity. Kids today don't know who they are because they've lived their entire lives in their cell phones and on social media in a fake digital world. And they don't know who they are. So they're obsessed with identity. It's their effort to find out who they really are. So they cling to these group identities. And then they fracture more and more into more obscure sexual groups in order to feel special, right? But it's a longing to find an identity. So the thing to just chew on, Colin Kaepernick, right, the first real leader of Black Lives Matter in pop culture, right? He was adopted by white parents. He only went woke when he started dating some girl who had him read Malcolm X and all these other people that got him woke. So he's got white parents. Naomi Osaka, the tennis star who's really big into this mental illness stuff, her dad's from Haiti. Her mom's from Japan. She grew up in Florida, so she's an American, but she's recently made this kind of odd push to be Japanese. She even lit the cauldron at the Olympic Games in Japan, representing Japan. So what's her identity? Does she even know? And Simone Biles is adopted. So I just wonder if there's anything there. A person's search for identity leading down, whatever our culture says is popular today. And today, wokeness is popular. In the end, it's all the more reason to find your identity in God and not in earthly cultural constructs. Coming up next, our friend David Harsanyi from the National Review about Biden's nominee for the ATF. Brutal nominee. And if we push, I think we can stop this from happening. Talking with David Harsanyi next. Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, the Biden nominee for the head of alcohol, tobacco, and firearms is awful. Here he is talking about you, firearm owner.
And so in their mind, they might be confident. They might think that they're diehard, ready to go. But unfortunately, they're more like Tiger King. And they're putting themselves and their families in danger. And so what I would suggest is for those people who were first-time gun owners, if they did go out and buy a gun, I would secure that gun locked and unloaded and hide it behind the cans of tuna and beef jerky that you've stored in a cabinet. And, only bring that out if the zombies start to appear. And I don't think they are.
That's David Chipman. Our friend David Harsanyi is here from the National Review. David, how are you, brother?
I'm well. Thanks for having me.
Great to talk to you. Tell me about this cat, David Chipman.
Well, as you saw there, he's not too fond of gun owners themselves. He's mocked them on numerous occasions. He wants to ban all kinds of guns that are widely owned by Americans, AR-15s and others as well. He's been a guy who makes up facts about guns, lies about them on TV, has advocated in front of Congress that people should be stripped of their guns, meaning not just banning them in the future, but sort of retroactively making guns illegal. So in every way, he's a fine anti-gun advocate, but he is not a person who should be tasked with running the ATF and overseeing gun laws of the people that he mocks.
So he sounds like a straight activist. Like he's like an anti-gun activist guy. Like, does he have that past? Did he used to work for like gun owner or like Bloomberg's gun organization or something?
Yeah, I mean, I think he still is employed by Gifford, which is a big anti-gun group. He has every right to do that. He just isn't the type of guy you'd want to see in government. But he's a little actually worse than that because he has an authoritarian streak in him. Recently, someone dug up a quote of his where he's talking about the First Amendment and he's sort of lamenting the fact that people get to say what they want and the police can't take your gun away for saying something that he considers hate speech. So that kind of instinct usually goes hand in hand, frankly. I mean, he doesn't believe people should be able to defend themselves. He mocks people who have legitimate reasons to have guns. Well, we all have a legitimate reason, but have legitimate fear of crime or, a stalker or whatever it is, mocking them for being worried about zombies because he thinks gun owners are idiots. So his disdain for people and American people who have guns, where, almost 40% of households probably have a gun in them, makes him someone who's not right for this job.
What's your take on the red flag laws? I live in San Diego, and San Diego County, it's something like has used the red flag law more than any other county in the state, something like that. And the local paper, of course, saying that with great fanfare and celebration. What's your take on the red flag laws?
Well, it's complicated. I mean, in general, I think that they are often misused. So there have to be many protections for people who have guns and who red flag laws are used against. There has to be some mechanism for the police to take away a weapon from someone who legitimately threatens themselves or others. Quite often, police ignore that sort of thing, even though they have the right to do it in Parkland and elsewhere. But on the other hand, it's quite often abused already. I think that in many places, there's too much leeway to simply take someone's gun away. And I have to say that Heller, the case that codified the individual right to gun ownership about a decade ago, started from a case called Emerson, where someone who had been in divorce proceedings had all his guns taken away from him in that manner. So when cities or law enforcement start taking people's guns in that way, I think that they risk having to go to court, and it might actually, in the end, help protect gun owners even more.
Good. Have you thought? Let's get to talk principles here, or worldviews, or mindsets. Have you thought about the people who are against guns and the politicians? I mean, there's a lot of motivations, right? You have your political motivations and whatnot, but who are the people who, I guess, what they don't trust people, or they don't, What is it? What's one of the more genuine driving forces that cause people to think no one should own a gun?
Well, that's a good question. I think there is legitimate concern by many people who just think that guns shouldn't be out there in society. They make us more violent. They lead to more criminality and more murder. So I think that there are people who have been involved in shootings themselves, or have seen a mass shooting or been in a mass shooting, that legitimately believe that guns have to be taken away from all people because they have no place in a civilized society. There are a bunch of other people who use that fear, who I think are authoritarian. I'm not trying to say that David Chipman is, a Nazi or something like that, but in every single authoritarian or every nation or tyranny, the first thing the government does is take away the guns of civilians. My problem with all this is that if your legitimate concern is criminality that you want to, stop, why are all gun laws always being aimed at the law-abiding, legitimate gun owner? It only makes it harder for them. There's very little ever done. There are many laws on the books. There's 14,000, I think, gun laws or something in that vicinity. And if we upheld them, we could do a lot to stop the shootings and the crime. But almost all of these things, like universal background check or going after AR-15s, which are involved in a minimal amount of crimes. I mean, AR-15s are rarely used. More people are killed by fists and kicking and knives than they are by AR-15s. They're always going after these things because incrementally they want to take away all guns from law-abiding citizens. That's what I think the end game is, and that's why I oppose them, because I think that everyone has a right to defend themselves.
I'm sure you saw the court case. It was out of San Diego, and the judge came back and was strong supporter of Second Amendment and said these assault rifles could just as easily have been called anti-crime guns. And he had another word to it. It was like self-defense guns instead of assault rifles. Just a nice point about how they control the language. I thought of you the other day, last question, when Biden talked about people with guns versus F-16s. And he uses this line all the time about how foolish we are thinking that we can go up against the military with F-16s. I thought of you when he said that. What's your rebuttal to that?
Well, it's true that if the military wanted to use nuclear weapons on people, that the guns would probably not do much. But I think we've seen in history, even in recent history, that guns can do small arms like this in Afghanistan or in Iraq or even in Vietnam or in other situations, can do plenty of damage. And the point, of course, isn't exactly that I can fight the army if I want. The point is that it's harder for the government to act, in authoritarian ways, to take away your rights when they know that the populace is armed. And that's one of the reasons the Second Amendment exists. Joe Biden, it's funny, and just to tie in another story, the January 6th riots, right? They say that those guys, I think it was a terrible moment in American history, but they think those guys were about to take over democracy and overthrow the government. But yet, so those guys with no guns could do that. But yet then on the other hand, they argue that, 300 million people with AR-15s can't do anything to stop the government. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. But anyway, I think.
Great point. Yeah. Great point. David Harsanyi. Hey, we got to run. National Review. Read everything he writes. Buy his books. Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, sir. Coming up next, we'll talk with one of the former editors of the Drudge Report, ever since Drudge just completely went off the deep end. He's got a new website. Talk about that next. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders. I don't know if one can overstate the importance of Drudge Report in recent political history, but I think everyone's noticed it's completely gone off the rails, especially during this last election. Joseph Curl used to be one of the editors of the Drudge Report, and he has his own new website, offthepress.com. Joseph, how are you, sir?
Very good. Thanks for having me, Mike. Appreciate it.
I'm grateful you're here. I got a bunch of questions, and we only got a few minutes. I hate that. But let's go back to the inception of Drudge. What was the mission statement or the reason for being of the Drudge Report from the jump?
Well, way back in the 90s, I mean, when he started it, it was really sort of for gossip. He worked at he's working at the gift shop at NBC, and he was kind of putting out little snippets of things that he gets. Books have reported that working in the gift shop, he used to go through garbage cans and get, this show is going to be canceled. These people are going to be in a new show. And it started like that. From there, it became a little more political. And then obviously in 1998, when Monica Lewinsky happened, boom, it was off to the races.
What from that point forward, what was like when you decide what stories to put up or what to not put up, what filter did you run it through? What did you find to be important or not important?
Yeah, I think Matt at the beginning was, he'll say that he's a libertarian. He's always leaned conservative, but the idea was early on to kind of give readers, even they face it way worse now, but even back then, it was hard to find conservative news. So he was kind of bringing you stories that you didn't see that often, and he was really sort of aggregating the entire internet at that point, which wasn't very big. So, he had a different kind of task at the beginning, but as it's grown, he's become basically the editor of the internet.
Yeah. Why? Why do you think it worked? Why did his kick off?
Well, I think Monica put him on the map, and I think then people went, boy, there's just a lot of good stuff on this page. But I think it was that reason. He would, he used to work 16, 18 hours a day, and he would just read everything. I mean, and so he'd read some wacky story out of, some small town in Kentucky and put it up, and then he'd find another interesting story from Colorado and put it up. So it was really a one-stop shop for people that were just looking for interesting news. And that's why, for us at Off the Press, the reason we're doing it now is that, number one, as you mentioned, Drudge has changed an awful lot. He backed Biden in this last campaign. But number two, it's even more of a fire hose, this flow of news that, people trying to make sense of it. What are the stories out there? Well, there's all this in my news feed. They're missing stuff on Twitter. I don't have time to read 100 websites. Our job is now to do that, is to read everything and go, here are the best 50 to 75 stories that you should definitely read.
Is your motive what people will click on? Is your motive what's most interesting, most entertaining, most important? How do you think about the story?
I think it's a great balance of all of those things, Mike. I think it's most important, but it's really interesting. It's stories everybody's talking about. It's stories that you should know about. And in some ways it's like, hey, these are some trending things. I mean, right now we're seeing, COVID is obviously all back in the news, but now we're masking up again. And now, we've got employers going to mandate masks. The federal government's going to mandate masks. What does that mean to Americans? Are you going to get mandated? Are you going to be forced to take one? So we're trying to get ahead of trends like that too.
Yeah. Did Drudge sell Drudge Report or did he change?
You know what? Nobody knows because it's just Matt. I mean, only Matt knows. And if he did, then the buyer knows. But nobody knows. I mean, there are times where I see a headline and I go, boy, that's a headline only Matt could write. But, other times I look at the page, it's very static. That's another thing we're going to do is that, if you look at the Drudge Report page now, it stays pretty much the same all day. And when I was there, we were swapping out 30 or 40 stories per 5-hour period. So, and we did it 3 times with 3 different editors. So really dynamic page. That's what Off the Press is going to be. Something that you've got to just check all the time, 10 times a day.
I wish you the best of luck. Offthepress.com. Joseph Curl, thanks for your time and thanks for your effort. Yeah, offthepress.com. All right, we'll give it a go. Offthepress.com. Hey, our big special tomorrow is about big tech and future technology, virtual reality, augmented reality, brain chips, Elon Musk's company Neuralink, crazy futuristic dystopian stuff coming up. Let's get all in front of it next. Tomorrow's special. Spread the word.